the other one, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
"2021 sucked. We all expected it to somehow be better than 2020, but all it took were a few choice people not giving a shit, and somehow it ended up just as bad. We're still in absolutely f***ed mode, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. That said, the toys this year were surprisingly phenomenal. Nobody really expected it after the travesty that was Earthrise. Beasts are ridiculously hard to do, and the new engineering system didn't seem to fit the style that much. Boy, was everyone wrong on that, though. Not only was Kingdom really well engineered, it might just be one of the best Generations lines we've gotten recently. Studio Series gave us some killer molds outside of the boredom found in SS86, and even Buzzworthy had some killer releases. Not to mention the exclusive game was insane. Some of the decos we got this year were absolutely mental. They announced a Black Zarak for Pete's sake. Actually, maybe not for Pete's sake. That phrase seems a bit iffy at the moment. What about for Brent's sake? Either way, it was a brilliant year for Transformers and Transformers-inspired action figures. Making a list for these was incredibly difficult, and I found myself reordering list numbers day after day. I don't know if I'm truly happy with the ranking at the moment, since it may change depending on which figure I mess with, but we really need to put 2021 to rest and move on to hopefully better times. As such, greetings Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and today's diagnosis pertains to the top 21 Transformers of 2021. But first, as with all lists on this channel, housekeeping is required. First, this isn't the be-all end-all. The purpose of these lists is to catalogue a YouTuber's own personal journey, not compare and contrast in order to create a baseline. This is the best period statement. I know other websites like to do that, and people always seem to criticize me specifically for this system even though I didn't come up with it, but this is YouTube. As such, this list constitutes of figures purchased in 2021, not figures that came out in 2021. There are no figures that don't count just because they were part of back collecting. If I want to put goddamn Classics Mirage on my list, I'm going to put Classics Mirage on my list. If you don't like it, make your own damn list. This might seem like a pointless thing to point out, but trust me, comments can be stupid at times. Secondly, this list is entirely subjective. I don't believe in the objective good ideology to begin with anyway, but especially with this is a list of my favorites, not a list of the definitively top of the line figures. The argument of you should have put X figure on the list doesn't apply here, because I'm not you and it doesn't matter. Finally, yes, this list includes third party. I have no idea why I keep getting complaints about this, with people claiming it should be a separate list because they aren't Transformers, but as with the previous housekeeping memos, if you don't like it, make your own damn lists. Anywho, enough dawdling. People don't tend to watch this shit anyway, skipping ahead to the list articles and complaining regardless, so I don't really know why I bother. Maybe it's so I can sarcastically point to a timestamp when they do. I don't know. Let's get on with it.
Number 21!
You know, it's funny. Prior to 2021, I didn't actually own any Lockdown figures. Yep, the name Dr. Lockdown was actually just something I pulled out of my ass. Lockdown isn't even my favorite character. That changed this year, however, with the ever ridiculously wonderful sales on the Facebook marketplace. And out of the two, the clear winner is the crown jewel of Unique Toys' Movieverse lineup. This thing feels like it shouldn't exist. Everything about it defies logic. The transformation is absurdly simple, and yet he appears as the spitting image of the on-screen character. Despite the heavy use of faux parts, the backpack remains clean as a whistle. And craziest of all, this thing was only $80. It's a legitimate copy. It came in a legitimate Unique Toys box, and it was cheaper than a Hasbro Leader Class figure. I don't get it. This figure baffles me at every turn, but what ever. It's a killer design that somehow remains simple and fun. Unique Toys seriously needs to get on a first trilogy Prime design. We're long overdue considering the disaster piece that was the MPM and its many knockoffs.
Number 20!
Crimson Wings is a difficult piece to recommend given the controversies surrounding his release. Coincidentally thrust into the world mere months after MP52's catastrophic flop, many people purchased him in protest. This is something I cannot advise against enough. His materials aren't the best on the planet, and his transformation, at least in the eyes of some, could be considered the worst ever conceived. That said, if you're into what it does as its own thing, wholly separate from the masterpiece release, then there's an abundance of joy to be found here. If you love complex transformations, this walks the line perfectly. It has lots of steps, but all of them make sense. The paintwork is both plentiful and durable, and it does one thing many third-party figures fail to do: capture the essence of the character to the T. Whether he's better than MP52 is not the question here, it's whether your own collecting sensibilities line up with Transform Elements design design style. If it doesn't, wait for another company to take a shot or shoot for the Make Toys version. Given the supplier cancelled my Acid Storm, I won't be able to, but that's okay because Crimson Wings does fit my sensibilities. And if it fits yours, you're in for an absolute treat.
Number 19!
Am I cheating by only including half a set in the ranking? Possibly. I mean, this is my list, so I can really put whatever I want on this. Kingdom Rodimus is an odd release. The core robot is one of the best figures Hashtag have put out all year, and this is in a year where things have been absolutely mental. The problem lies with the box he gets stuck with. Had this done more, this could have been the best Commander class figure of the trilogy, but as it stands, it's ultimately dead weight. Dead weight accurate to the original toy, sure, but still dead weight. However, I'd be lying if I didn't acknowledge how awesome the core robot was. The alt mode rocks in ways the SS86 version could only dream of. The engineering is extremely clever and satisfying, and the robot mode checks absolutely every box you could want. It's covered in paint, etched with infinite levels of detail, and poses like Araki's disciple. With the constant sales commanders go on, he's easily worth the pickup, even if a third of the price is worthless. One day I'd love to see this guy in a new deco without the trailer, because this mold is simply too good to be held back by it, and also too good to only be used once. Although knowing Hasbro, if they ever do a shattered glass version, they'll just stick with the SS86 one. God damn it.
Number 18!
Well, Hasbro finally listened. They finally fixed the Mirage mold, tweaking the proportions, refining the kibble, and slimming out the alt mode. So we've got the perfect Mirage, right? Well, sorry to say, but I'm gonna have to give this spot to the Classics version. It's absurd how well this figure holds up. Sure, a lot of figures from this period are still good, but they're often bogged down with weird kibble choices, limited articulation, and engineering that doesn't quite hold a candle. Mirage, however, easily tangos with the best of modern figures. He doesn't feel like a figure released in the modern era, but he basically does everything you could want, minus a thigh swivel. Classics Mirage is a timeless deluxe that Hasbro still hasn't managed to top to this day. No disrespect to the Kingdom version, but sometimes you just can't beat the classics. Pun very much intended. You.
Number 17!
So, quick hot take. I actually really like Freedom Leader. I know a lot of people hate the alt mode, hate the robot mode, lack of solidity, and despise the transformation, and while I agree those are issues, I still really like what it's doing. It's probably one of the best looking robot modes in my collection, and it poses really well too. That said, what if I told you there was an even better version of Bumblebee Optimus Prime on the market? Enter Lemon Tree Prime, a figure I was oddly drawn to for some reason or another. He basically tries to carve out a new scale in a similar size to Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black Series. And yes, X2 Toys tried to do this a while ago, but Lemon Tree actually succeeds this time. Not just because people are actually interested in the lineup, but also because this might be the best looking Bumblebee Prime on the market. The detail is absolutely spot on, and the proportions are much closer than his Toy World predecessor. Sure, you have to deal with the enlarged mummy milkers thanks to the battery compartment that I've never been able to use because I can't figure out what size batteries go in there, but it's covered in head to toe in paint and mechanical detail. It's expensive for sure, coming in at $100, but you can see where all of that budget goes. And the craziest part? It's engineered really well. Yeah, even better than SS38. Whoever said it had mandatory parts forming was lying. It transforms from bot to vehicle and back in the blink of an eye. No, I did not get the MPM. After the atrocities I've seen in that line, I just can't bring myself back to it unless it's something that really calls to me. That said, I can't imagine it's much better than this, if it is better at all. This is a crazy good figure. Can't say I'm interested in going all in on this line, but if or when they do a thrust, you can consider me a guaranteed customer.
Number 16!
No, this isn't Studio Series Jolt. I get the confusion, but I assure you, this is a Megatron. Essentially, the store in Singapore I usually buy mainline from had a bunch of these left in the storeroom, and I took a gamble. It was cheap, and ultimately it was surprisingly awesome. You'd think the vehicle mode would be boring as shit, but when you take a look at the metallic paint job, die-cast metal that gives it good weight, and rubber tires, it ends up feeling way more premium than you'd expect. Now sure, the transformation does feel a bit messy. It's a Binaltech era transformation. Even though they've made leaps and bounds since the beginning, it still lacks the maturity of a full masterpiece release. But when you get to that robot mode, ooh boy, this is mental. This does not feel like a Megatron at all, but as its own thing, it really is a thing of beauty. The layered armor, pushing the samurai aesthetic with sliding panels and bulging legs. It's so crazy and so awesome. And sure, it's a bit hollow in the legs and extremely back heavy, but I don't really care. It's insane and I absolutely love it. So, any questions? No, he's not Jolt. I already said that. Weren't you listening? How about paying attention next time, you distracted
Number 15!
When I first got this figure, I was absolutely blown away. It felt like this hole inside me had been filled. A hole that had been clamoring for a classic-style masterpiece release. That maturity, that simplicity, that cleverness, that attention to detail, it was all finally there. In the weeks since, the honeymoon phase has ended, and I've realized it may be a little too simple to get a higher spot on this list. 10 years ago, this would have been just another masterpiece, but now, this is a striking return to form. I don't trust Takara to fully return to this style. Their next big release jumps right back into the excessive toon style, and given the designers working on it, I suspect it'll be similar to MP52. Over-engineered paint chipping galore and lacking the essence of the character. The old designers are primarily working on mainline and the upcoming MPG releases, so seeing a return to this style probably ain't happening. But that makes this release so special. They brought back the original designer of the G1 toy just for this. He ain't done shit with Transformers since, save for that weird watch thingy nobody has. It may have been a commemoration for the car, but for me, it's a trip down memory lane. It's a reminder of what MP used to be, and what it still can be, even if it never will come to pass again. I don't see Masterpiece returning to its golden age anytime soon, given their audience in Japan likely loves what they're doing regardless. But hey, at least I'm thankful for Reboost. He may not be the most extravagant Masterpiece figure on the planet, but he at the very least embodies the Masterpiece name more than any figure in the line I've seen since.
Number 14!
I was so certain this figure would reach the top 5 this year. When I first got him, I was blown away by the engineering, the presence, the articulation, everything. They succeeded in the impossible task, outdoing the deluxe from a decade and a half prior. With that, I truly believed no official figure would top him personally. And yet, here we are, number motherfucking 14. It's absurd how good Transformers were this year. Something like Cyclonus can hit such a low spot. Of course, you probably don't need to hear me go on at length about how awesome he is. I've raved ad nauseum in my video from the start of the year, so most of you should be well acquainted with his brilliance. Kingdom really was a brilliant line, wasn't it? Can't wait to see how the Armada will turn out. Wonder if it'll be in Dirge colors. In fact, can we just get a repaint line of animation errors? I'm dead serious. I buy the shit out of those.
Number 13!
To the uninformed, this might seem like an idiotic choice. It's just some random Legends repaint from a line that people don't care about anymore. Outclassed 3 times over, no less. Well, my reasoning is simple. Nostalgia. This was one of my favorite figures as a kid, and the guilt of losing it as a dumb kid was eating away at me. I didn't need the figure for my Legends collection. I'd already ticked off the box with Jetfire, but on a personal level, it felt wrong. Having it back in my collection just feels right. It feels like I've reconnected with my childhood a little bit more. Yes, this ranking is based entirely on nostalgia. This figure is pretty good, as I've covered, but that's not why it's here. It's here because of how it makes me feel, and ultimately that's what this list is about. This is about my favorites, not the objective best, if that even exists. I thought the whole point of these was to share what you've collected each year, but I always get snarky comments about how my opinion is shit, and, well, yes, my opinion is, it's in the title, but y'all don't have to be that confrontational. Make your own damn list and put figures from your childhood that you lost on it. When you're in the position I'm in, trust me, you'll understand.
Number 12!
For the longest time, I was apprehensive about getting this figure. I'd just gotten the original, and I'd been absolutely blown away by it. How could this figure be any better? How could it improve on perfection, especially with a smaller budget than the original and the limitation of the Ultra Magnus progenitor? But then I kept seeing photos, and I kept being drawn to them. I started messing with Siege Magnus again after getting annoyed at the fandom, renouncing him in favor of the mess that was the Kingdom retool. So I committed. I wouldn't actively seek him out, but if I saw him for cheap, I'd snap him up. And being the pandemic, of course people were downsizing their collections left, right, and center. Turns out this figure embodies everything that made the original so great. It's got the chunk, aesthetically anyway. It's got the play patterns, even if it doesn't have the play functions. And it's just fun to pose regardless. It also manages to look good without a height extension in combined mode, so that's a plus. And ironically, this feels more like Cybertron Prime than the hybrid style version I picked up about a week later. I'm really kicking myself in the foot for missing out on this one when it first released. Prime and Hotshot sold really poorly, which pushed back the planned Unicron trilogy updates to God knows when. I feel like I share responsibility for that, and I've learned my lesson. We've got to vote with our wallets sometimes, and with some of the upcoming releases, I intend to do just that.
Number 11!
What can I say about this figure that I haven't said in relation to his line mate already? Thunder Manus is essentially Delta Manus, but power mastery. The detail is phenomenal, the paintwork is exquisite, the construction is awesome, the engineering is fun, the alt mode rocks. What else is there to say? It's another great Make Toys release in a long line of great Make Toys releases. And once again, I didn't pay too much for it. $100, that's all. $10 above leader price, that's a steal. Of course, it remains to be seen whether this release is a continuation of their legacy or a eulogy. They've still not released anything since the last list I put out, courtesy of the thieving f***ers that killed the Unrustables team. Apparently their Acid Storm released, but they refused to sell it to the store I get mine from, so I have no idea. And in terms of new molds, nothing has been put out. I seriously hope Make Toys doesn't become the new fans project. They don't deserve such an injustice. They deserve to rise from the ashes and bring back their unique angle to third party. Oh well, we'll have to see. We'll just have to hope this pandemic doesn't take yet another casualty.
Number 10!
This mold had such a rocky start. Engineering-wise, it always had potential, but Hasbro's laziness at the start of Earthrise crippled it before it could ever get off the ground. And yet, it pushed onward, delivering not just one, but two brilliant retools. Now, if you had asked me when I first got them, I probably would have placed Inferno on this list. But having gone through the review process and having put things into perspective, I have to give the honor to Artfire. He just does so much right, even taking a mediocre Target Master and imbuing him with life. And get this, the mold isn't even done yet. Mere days after releasing my review, Hauler leaks in the Walmart exclusive line. This mold has turned from a story of tragedy to a story of triumph. It may not be discussed all that often, and I doubt any versions of this will make it onto many people's lists, but f*** you, Inferno and Artfire are brilliant. Especially Artfire. Christ, I can't believe we got a Chug Artfire. What even is this timeline?
Number 9!
This figure isn't particularly on the list because it blew me away. I mean, it did at first, and it continued to do so with the application of repro labels, but that's not the main reason why. My desk is often cluttered with Transformers for messing around with. It's a curse that many a collector falls into, keeping bots near the computer to mess with whilst watching Netflix or taking a stab at shiny hunting. Since I got him, Shatterglass Prime hasn't left my desk. He's always there, and I'm always messing with him. I don't even like the Shatterglass deco that much to begin with. Give me the Evangelion deco over him any day. Yet something about the specific mold with this specific deco and these specific repro labels, I keep coming back to it. Of all the Shattered Glass figures to release this year, I'm gobsmacked to find out that the figure that takes the spot isn't even technically in the main lineup. Amazing. God, my collecting journey is weird. You know what third-party masterpiece needs? Toy options. I know everyone goes nuts over the Sunbow shit, but I'd be so much more into that portion of third-party if they at least offered swappable pieces for the toy stylings. G1 toys are weird and wacky, which is way more interesting than flat slabs of nothing. Fans Toy Soundwave, or I suppose Robot Paradise Soundwave, fills that void, and until he released, I didn't even realize that void needed filling. He's not complex, he's not overly expensive, he's not boring as shit, he's just a solid Soundwave with wonderful toy stylings. Said toy bits could integrate a bit better into the transformation, but even then, this is such a fun figure. It's chunky, it's wacky, it's just awesome. Of course, I still believe Takara will come out with a new one to go alongside all the other toon shit that they've put out recently, but I don't care. Even ignoring how bad it's probably going to be done given their less than stellar track record, it's not going to go for this aesthetic. It's not going to be up my alley, so honestly, I don't care. This is the masterpiece Soundwave for me, and it probably will be for a very long time.
Number 7!
War for Cybertron Optimus Prime, Classics Mirage, Titans Return Trigger Happy, Siege Spinister, Studio Series Sideswipe. These are what I consider to be the best deluxes I've ever handled. No other figure compares to these in terms of engineering and play value. These are masters amongst their peers. Today, I add another entry to that list with the best beast former Kingdom has to offer. This figure had everything stacked against it. Redoing the beasts in modern style was difficult enough, but add on the fact that she was a fembot and oh boy, you've got a recipe for disaster. Yet somehow not only did this figure rise above these problems, but it soared. This figure is bar none the best fembot Hashtag have put out since I don't know how long. Not even Skywarp compares with this Baconland patriotic splendor. This figure is so good that it's even got G1ers paying attention. I've got friends who don't give a f*** about beast formers breaking their vows not to buy any just to sample this figure. Airraiser is truly something else, a once-in-a-lifetime figure that will likely never be outdone. That said, I really hope some of that awesomeness rubs off on the upcoming Minerva. Please, we're currently stuck with the fans hobby version, which is quite frankly shit. We need a better version, indulge us just this once.
Number 6!
Last year, I was determined to put at least one New Age Seeker on the list. The engineering was so awe-inspiring that I had to at least pick one. Ultimately, I settled on Sunstorm by default, since he was the only one who didn't irk me. I had no such problem this year, because Shazam finally gives me a color scheme that I adore. I'm fully aware the Action Master Thundercracker color scheme isn't for everyone. I know a certain VTuber wants it to burn in hell, or in his words, Twitch. It is for me though, the gaudy 90s bullshit is right up my alley. I really love this thing. I love the mold. I love that it effortlessly does all the things seekers have trouble with. I love that this mold is getting the attention it deserves now. I love the fact this color scheme got done, and I love it as a figure in itself. As I said in my review of this figure, it may seem annoying to the uninformed at first that New Age are doing such obscure color variants just to cash in. However, here's the thing. They were able to get to this point because the mold was so masterfully created. We've seen what happens when a seeker crashes and burns. New Age didn't do that. These are selling gangbusters, and deservingly so. It's a killer mold, and if you're a Legends fan who doesn't have at least one in your collection by now, I honestly pity you. Treat yourself. Get your favorite. Indulge in the best Legends Seeker molds we've ever gotten.
Number 5.
Who the thought this was going to turn out this good? A Cybertronian Bumblebee. Yes, because the last one was the best thing on the planet. And in the buzzworthy line of all things? What, did Hasbro have no faith in this? And what's up with that head? Why does it look like Brawn more than Bumblebee? Against my better judgment, though, I gave this figure a chance. And holy shit, this is something else. The best way to describe it would be the Bumblebee version of the Siege Tetrajets, using its shell in crazy unique ways, and delivering some of the best articulation at the size. Even the head looks fine in person. It's just all around a fantastic deluxe. In fact, added to the list of best deluxes ever, it deserves it. I really hope this figure gets a wider release someday. Origins Bumblebee sadly never got a proper release in Australia, save for a Xavier release with a ridiculous price tag. I want to see this on shelves without the pylons and with a $29 price tag. The amount of people who haven't sampled this figure is mental. Legit, I had a customer come up at work asking for it, and I had to tell them it wasn't releasing down under. Everyone needs an Origins Bumblebee in their life. Christ, I can't believe we're at the stage where there's not enough Bumblebees on store shelves. What has this world come to?
Number 4.
2021 was the year where I checked off a lot of my grails. People were continuing to offload their collections en masse, so of course I wasn't going to miss out on the opportunities when they arose. I finally sourced a hybrid-style Galaxy Convoy. Gotta say, while it's not bad, it's definitely got that hybrid-style clunk to it. I nabbed myself a Keroro Starscream, although regrettably the stickers come in the magazine, which will likely be impossible to come by. Guess I'll have to somehow make stickers for it myself. No grail acquisition, however, was more exciting than MP10 Evangelion Convoy. This, for me, has always been the be-all end-all. I missed the pre-order window while I was working back at the shitty car wash I attended as my first job, and ever since then I've mourned my loss by endlessly scrolling through $1,000 or higher listings. And then I realized Carousel in Singapore had them for pretty much retail and jumped on it immediately. Sadly, if you're looking for another copy for yourself, that ship has sailed, but still, better than the eBay prices. Either way, finally having this in my collection and having only spent $350 on it, it still doesn't feel real. The figure remains just as beautiful as I imagined it to be, with the gorgeous EVA Unit 1 colors draped across one of the best masterpiece molds ever released. Even filming this now, it doesn't feel like it's mine. It feels like I'm borrowing it from a friend for filming purposes. I fully expected to grab this when I was 30 or 40, with a sustainable job and maybe grabbing it as a wedding present or some shit. But nope, it's here right now, and it's insane. Dreams do come true sometimes, I suppose.
Number 3.
When I first saw product samples of these, I didn't trust Magic Square to deliver a solid product. This was of course for a number of reasons. They'd just come off a highly unsuccessful Megatron, and they'd followed it up with a Bumblebee that was basically the New Age version but worse. I'd also been getting a bunch of figures from their backlog over the year, and let me tell you, they weren't great. Plus beyond that, this set had been in production since the company's inception. It had been up for pre-order since the time when TF Source was actually a reputable store to buy from. I didn't trust it at all. Sure, I was going to buy it eventually due to my crippling Legends completionism, but I wasn't going to rush. There was no reason for me to get excited, until a friend of mine sold me the first two on the cheap. He realized Legends wasn't really his thing, and just wanted them gone. I was so blown away that very night I pre-ordered the other two sets. These weren't up to the same standard as Breakdown and Wild Rider. They were even better. I know the upcoming Kingdom Menasor is quite the controversial topic. Word on the street is it's going to be following the same style as this version here, and that's got a lot of people up in arms. A large portion of the fandom considers the skeleton method a farce, and not a true combiner. From my perspective, if Legacy Many is half as good as the Magic Square version, it'll probably be the best goddamn combiner Hashtag have ever done. The engineering on this thing is stellar, the options are unparalleled, the alt modes are sexy, the trailer is mind-boggling. How the actual does it go from this to this? How? If Magic Square operated in this space primarily, they'd probably be the best Legends company on the planet. Sadly, they seem to have learned none of these lessons with their Devastator, at least from the reports I've heard, but oh well. At least we got this magnificent fellow out of it.
Number 2.
One thing I love about third party is them understanding what a group of people wants and delivering releases that fill that void. I mean, the concept seems simple enough, but it doesn't just apply to characters. Sure, anyone can make a Minerva, but that doesn't mean it'll be good. I'm talking about filling an engineering void as well. People want Masterpiece figures in the style of old Masterpiece, in the style of Reboost, but on a wider scale. Planet X doesn't just fill the voids of IDW and Fall of Cybertron, they also fill the engineering void. Cadmos is a truly gorgeous figure that I feel doesn't get enough credit, especially with the HasLab version on the horizon. He's engineered insanely well, sculpted like an ancient Greek statue, and painted better than almost any other figure I've gotten this year. The only real exception is Lemon Prime, and he's not really the same in terms of size. Of course, with the HasLab one on the horizon, I don't think I'm going to bother with their upcoming Victory Leo if it ever does release, and that's okay. He's a wonderful display piece on his own, and one I'm so glad I had the pleasure of reviewing. I know nobody cares about him, but honestly, they really should. He's everything I want third party to be, everything it can be. I'm not the biggest Planet X fan on the planet, but me, this figure came real close to making me go all in. Although I probably never would have because I've got way too many other things to focus on, and out of those things there were many other great figures I got over the year. I'd be wrong to not at least mention them here, so here are the honourable mentions. Earthrise Bailiff, a surprising retool that completely transformed a boring farce into one of the best Earthrise figures on the market, even if such isn't a high bar to jump. It was even worth dealing with whatever the fuck the judge was supposed to be. Make Toys Rear End and Hurricane. What can I say that I haven't already? It's another reminder of why Make Toys is so awesome, and another reason in a long line of reasons why I want them to return. The only annoyance is that I have to keep reminding myself that they were manufactured by Make Toys and not MMC. Kingdom Core Megatron. Earlier this year, this spot would have been taken by Starscream, but as the year progressed, I found myself respecting what Megatron did more, especially with the backpack upgrades. I don't usually do gap fillers, but this really makes this set awesome. MMC Eris Cultor. I know a lot of people adore this figure, and it's definitely got some neat qualities. I just don't think she goes above and beyond in ways the actual list members do. She's a great step in a new direction for MMC, but the more I mess with her, the less enthusiastic I get. Still a damn fine MP release though. Kingdom Warpath. How has everyone forgotten about this figure already? I know Kingdom was jam-packed with awesome figures, but don't forget the Forerunners so soon. Whether it's better than the old generations one will depend on the individual, but it's definitely worth a pickup either way. Masterpiece Wheeljack. Everything I could want from a Masterpiece figure. I just wish they'd make them these days like they used to. But well, guess we gotta settle for Reboost and Raiden. HasLab Unicron. I know this is quite the controversial pick, but trust me, this is a figure that needs to be seen in person to understand. You can complain about it all you like in photos and watching reviews, but the true brilliance lies in its presence. You cannot truly call this figure trash once you have beheld it in person. It's a figure that should have turned out terrible given the circumstances, but it was a masterpiece in its own right. And finally, Universe 2008 Sunstorm. This Legends mold was already fantastic, but this deco really brings it to the next level. It might even be more fun than the full-sized version, although I'd have to mull it over a bit first before definitively making that judgment. One more judgment needs to be made though, and that's the winner of Figure of the Year. Who might it be? Who might take the #1 spot? Yep. I'm dead serious. With all the third party, with all the Masterpiece, with everything Kingdom had to offer, nothing beat Grimlock. The list kept changing over the year. I kept adding figures, removing figures, and swapping places, and yet Grimlock always remained at the top. No other transformation was as addictive as this. No other robot exuded the same presence in either mode. Not even Unicron. This feels like the classic leader class release we've always deserved, and it came out of SS86 of all things. My distaste with the line has been well documented. I just don't see the same passion in it as I do in War for Cybertron, and yet here we are. Grimlock delivers. Slag too, but personally his not my favorites. Chances are you'll either love one or the other. Why, you may ask? I don't know, just something I've noticed with the fandom. Either way, I cannot wait for the last three. They're taking their time with these, not to the level of Magic Square Menasor, but still making sure they get the time they deserve. I'm sure as a result they'll be practically perfect Dinobots. And I'm sure as a result, I won't review them. I always try to review figures that have an interesting angle to them, and Grimlock doesn't. He's amazing in the most genuine way I've seen for a long time, and as such, he's practically unreviewable. I can't write a script on him because there's nothing to say. He's just amazing. End of story. That may change in the future. I might do a retrospective review when all 5 are released. I don't know, just a thought. Either way, this figure stands atop so many others with its sheer brilliance. Shogo Hasui, thank you for your service. Sure, you may have given us Earthrise, Starscream, and Cliffjumper, but your W's greatly outweigh your L's, and this is a big W. 2022 has me excited for a lot of things. Aside from the rest of the Dinobots, who I'm sure will be just as good if not better, we've got a ton of great releases to look forward to. Legacy looks stunning so far, minus maybe RC, who looks like she could go either way. I'm sure she'll look awesome in red and black though. Oh, wait, they're not doing her? Seriously? What the f? And that's just what's announced. You want to talk about unannounced figures? Breakdown is finally gonna get his boyfriend, and it's not the red version. MP Raiden looks sweet. I don't care what anyone says. Even with all the kibble, these molds look full of life, and the train modes are absolutely divine. Menasor is probably going to be awesome, although I'm half tempted to swap out Dead End's head for the Cyberverse version. The Bumblebee Cybertronian figures look great. We're getting a Lio Kaiser from Iron Factory? Mate, a legend scale Lio Kaiser is a grail that doesn't exist for me, and then the best company for the job announces it. This is absolutely insane.
Oh my God! Holy sh!
I'm crying here. Holy holy and it's not even at the end of this year. There's seriously a ton to get excited for this year, and although I probably won't be able to review as much of it as last year due to external circumstances, I'm uber excited regardless. But until then, as always, fan and public consciousness is a conversation, so drop your best figures of the year down below. And as always, remember, there's a context for everything. Till next time.